Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you. Hello, everyone. I'm happy. I'm excited. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing today?
I am very well. Long time no speak, obviously.
Yeah, indeed.
So we are going to be on for a very exciting time. Everyone listening to this, whether you're with us live, obviously feel free to say hi in the chat or watching the replay. Essentially, we're finishing the month on a bang. I mean, the title says it all. It's all about making sure that you are moving away from any self-sabotage pattern that you might have around money, obviously, but also because we had a conversation with Sarah and we've talked about the fact that she works, and obviously I'm going to let you introduce yourself in a few seconds, both on the sort of like the mindset, but also like practical tips that could potentially implement it. This is also what we're going to be focusing on. So without further ado, Sarah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Would that be okay to share more about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Sarah Brill, obviously. I am what I call a millennial money expert. I'm also a certified financial coach and accredited transformative coach. So essentially, in a nutshell, I help people overcome their financial overwhelm, their financial guilt, and help them to save more without the sacrifice and invest it in a way that helps people create wealth in their own life, financial freedom for the future.
What a mission! And obviously, I've been lucky enough to know more about you. It definitely means it definitely looks like you also had previous life that led you to where you are today. Because I know we've also talked a lot about potentially what career transitioning look like, what potentially can have as an impact as well on the finances. So, is that okay to share maybe a little bit more briefly about your background and what led you to what you're doing today, which is a fantastic mission?
Yeah, so I think what I mentioned to you was that I'm really lucky to have lived and called 4 different countries home, but I've also
Nice.
traveled quite a lot. So I used to work in a corporate role abroad, and that led to me having burnout, which kind of meant that I felt like I really wanted to travel the world and really with no stress, even though there might have been some financial stress at that time. And yeah, I kind of went on this journey. I lived abroad in Thailand for a year, and I ended up back in the UK after I got injured and wasn't able to dive
Mm.
anymore. To basically reinvent, oh, I don't know if I froze, but to basically reinvent and recreate my life. So I studied financial coaching to basically help people to feel empowered to live their best life right now. So
Love that.
yeah, that's kind of my journey to this point.
Love it. I feel like we are on a similar mission to help people in terms of living their best life, whether it's about having a career that they're truly, truly happy with, whether it's making sure that they've got everything they need when it comes to overcoming any, money mindset blocks or so on. So definitely very happy we connected. Side story, and obviously I'm committing to any one of you watching. I feel like I need to have you on the podcast because I feel like your career journey and your life. You've mentioned bits and bobs just here, but I feel like there is an entire conversation we need to unpack over there. Full disclosure, everyone, this episode has almost been called Girls Who Scuba, a deep dive into respective best diving spots in the world. That's for another time. So let's bring it back to today's topic. The one thing I'd love to know more, especially considering what you do, is what would you say or what would you have seen as the typical sort of behaviors when it comes to self-sabotage around money? Well, what happens?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways in which self sabotage shows up, and we might identify it with it in different ways. So, some people will experience the emotional self sabotage, which could be things like
Mm,
being stressed or overwhelmed or just generally worried with their money. Um, it could look like guilt as well. So,
yeah.
really not allowing yourself to buy the things that you really want, or
Right.
buying the things and still feeling guilty anyway. So,
Mm,
buying your Starbucks coffee and then saying, actually, I really shouldn't be buying this. And then kind of
okay.
feeling a little bit guilty whilst you're still drinking it. And I've even spoken to people who maybe feel guilty about, let's say, going on holiday, right? And then actually, while being on holiday, still having that stress of money going through their mind. So, can I really afford to be here? Is this going to lead to debt? Um, the other thing, I guess, more practically, is not paying off debt is a way that it might show up for people.
Mm,
90% of people I speak to don't know how much debt they have, and 95%
okay.
people don't know when they're going to be debt free.
Wow.
So that's a really big way that we can self-sabotage ourselves. And it's not always linked to our income. Sometimes the more we earn, the more financial stress we actually have. So that might also take its or show itself in the form of not optimizing our finances in the right
Mm,
way. So having savings, but keeping it as savings rather than investing it in a way that serves us for the future.
right. I mean, loads of things here.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be a probably a big loaded question, but where do you think this is coming from? Because again, this tune's topic was all about owning your worth, and I've had a conversation with the different guests, including, for example, Crystal, where we talked a little bit more about the fact that there is pretty much no structure when it comes to education at school, right? You just sometimes replicate the patterns that you have seen when you were growing up as a kid in your family. Where do you think the whole sort of self-sabotage, whether it's emotional, whether it's the guilty trip that goes with it, whether it's not knowing if you're debt free or not, or when will you be, where do you think this is coming from?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of things. As you said, first of all, I think people don't have the right tools. We're not
Mm,
taught how to manage money at school, right? And if we are, a lot of people have the belief that they are really bad at maths, and that's a
yeah.
form of self-sabotage as well. I'm not very good with numbers, so I can't look at my bank account, and that creates like the self-sabotage in the sense that if we avoid it and we don't open the
Mhm.
envelopes, that's not going to be there, but actually it builds
Yeah, it is.
or it can, I guess, as you said, show up in the stories that we tell ourselves and our money stories, which really are ingrained in us from the age of 4. So we learn a lot of our money psychology and the way that the world operates when we're really young. And
Wow.
so all the things that we hear when we're younger about money, we can't afford that. We can't have a McDonald's today. That's a treat. Money doesn't grow on trees. All of the things we hear perhaps growing up, they, as you said, stick with us. And we're never taught throughout our adult lives to really look internally and say, what control do we have over our own lives? Instead, we're influenced a lot by the media and the news, particularly at the moment, the cost of living crisis. And often those things can influence the way that, we perceive money at any given time as well.
Very interesting. I mean, 4, as in 4 years old. This is really something that probably is going to stick with me. It's interesting because it made me reflect on sort of my own journey as well with finances. And to be very honest with you, I realized pretty late that I had some work to do around self-sabotaging, because since I was 16 years old, I've always worked on the side of going to school. So I've always been sort of financially independent from early on. And I literally started my working career with like a 30K student debt, like classic sort of like, French person who just got out of business school, had to pay for it. And so I felt like very early on, I've always been sort of responsibilized to actually pay that every month. But yeah, I think it took me probably like a couple of years of being here in the UK and realized that every month was a struggle, like in terms of how I was finishing the month. And I felt like I actually had it under control because I knew there was, the payment for the student loan, and then obviously the payment for the rent. Like I knew what was going out, but actually I think I was obviously unconsciously sort of like blinding the whole, like, let's be 100% in control, let's understand what exactly is coming in, what exactly is going out, apart from the rent and the student loan, which I know about, you know what I mean, like really going into that degree of like awareness and trying to deep dive. Like you said, I was on purpose oblivious of like diving into this. I was one of those that definitely told to myself, I'm not good with math, I'm not good with numbers from an early age. So I completely resonate with what you said. And I know that with the work I do, is definitely about the first step with all of my clients, which is awareness. Like, let's make sure that you are aware of whatever is happening with you, any limiting belief, any potential toxic career experiences that you've navigated. And I mean, I don't know if this is also how you work with your clients, but I feel like the first step is obviously awareness to understand potentially the way you're self sabotaging yourself around money, like the ones you've mentioned, or it could be just awareness in the sense that maybe things are just not working out for you in terms of whether it's your finances, the way you manage it, and maybe your finance goals for later. So, yeah, I'd love to know more from you. How do we move on from potentially thinking there is something going on, but we're not 100% sure about, to clear awareness of like, okay, those are the things that I need to work on to work on my money mindset?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important things is actually recognizing our self-worth and what we
Mm.
want for
Ooh,
ourselves and our
big
life.
one.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I mean, often we kind of shrink our goals and dreams. We kind of sort of say, well, it would be nice to buy a property and it would be nice to have a couple more holidays this year and but pay down the car. But, you know, a lot of that is driven by societal expectations, right? A lot of
Mm.
that is the expectation in the UK, particularly home ownership is this like, I guess idea that people aspire to have, right? They aspire to own a property. But when I actually ask people, why? What is it that you want? What about that's going to actually, you know, allow you to achieve your rich life or your dreams? And fair enough if someone wants to do it because, they want to decorate or they want to have their own place or they're planning to raise a family. There's certain reasons which are justified. But at the same time, a lot of the time, we don't know why. We just kind of say, well, I don't really want to be paying rent. But actually, sometimes it can be more useful or helpful to pay rent in a situation where maybe you're not quite ready to purchase. So I think, first of all, it's really important to get clear on your goals.
Yeah.
What does your rich life actually look like? If you did have that money,
Mm.
what would you do with it? And I'm talking like not just tomorrow, but also 10 plus years into the future, because that allows us to then plan in an effective way so you can achieve your goals. Um, I think the other couple of things that I was thinking about was the first thing is budgeting. So
Mm.
really clear on your numbers. It doesn't necessarily have to be to the penny, but sometimes there is this sort of awkward fear. Like we're a bit ashamed of it. We know that maybe the numbers don't quite add up. So we don't really want to look at it. And we kind of park it to the side and we say, well, no one really has a budget. Or when I've done a budget before, I haven't actually stuck to it. So there's no point me doing it. And that's not really serving you to help you achieve the life that you want to achieve. So part of having a healthy financial habit is actually having visibility over your finances. And that will help you create the control so that things don't feel so overwhelming, you know?
Mm.
Um, and it's getting clear on your fixed outgoings and your savings. And then, as you said, you've got this sort of pot in the middle, your nice to haves, your luxuries, your guilt free spending is what I like
Yeah.
to call it. And then you can allow yourself to use that to spend it in the way that you like. Yeah, I don't know if that's, I don't
No,
know.
yeah, it completely makes sense. To be honest, it drew me to a specific particular exercise last year. I mean, not 2 years ago, when we first got married. I live with a project director who is very much into like Excel spreadsheets and so on. And so he was like, "Okay, we're getting married. Let's do a budget." And I remember like feeling all panicky about that Excel of like mapping it out, like every single expense that we'll have in the wedding. And actually it was the worst, most painful exercise I've done in a long time with numbers, and at the same time this was actually very valuable because throughout the whole process, like you were saying, the fact that we budgeted allowed us to sort of alleviate some of the pressure, and make sure that we had a stress-free experience. So completely hear you with that. So anyone listening to this, it might seem painful and daunting. I feel you, I hear you, I've been there, but potentially this is the best thing that you can do for yourself. And I think this is the thing also, is that something that I love bring back to those conversations is the big C word, which is comfort zone. Like sometimes, even though it's painful, even though we're not where we're meant to be in our finances, we'd love to do more, we'd love to achieve more. There is some form of comfort of staying in that. Either it's ignorance, either it's self-sabotaging on purpose, knowing that we're completely overspending, whatever that is. And the one thing that I'd love to know more from you is, do you have any recommendation, any even practical exercise or any client stories that you can share of people who know they had to change, it took some time to change because they were within their comfort zone of self-sabotaging, if you can put it this way. Any particular things that you can ask, you can share with us, so for anyone listening to this and feeling like, yeah, I feel stuck in that, can actually action on that.
Yeah, so the first thing that I'd say is with money, there is a difference between competence and confidence.
Mm,
So, in order to actually create confidence with our finances, it is really about being competent and understanding the numbers. If you don't know your
mm,
numbers, you're probably never going to get to the point where you can actually use that money in a way that it's
mm,
serving. One, I'm thinking about the debt line through my head. So, one of the things that's helpful is to actually get clear on how much is owed, what the interest rates are, and then you
mm,
can start to figure out how long it's going to take you to pay off. And I think one thing that surprises people is when they look at, if they put £10 more or £20 more towards their credit, they can pay it off for anything from, like, let's say it's 24 years, and they can bring it down to 2 years, right?
amazing.
So it's about understanding where you're putting your money so that you're feeling empowered with it. And then you sort of reduce the guilt that you have when you do want to go out and spend that money on things that you love, because you know that the necessities are taken care of. And I've helped a lot of people get out of debt, but also I've helped a lot of people leverage their finances and actually get clear on, how much do I need to feel secure? How much do
Mm,
I really need in my emergency fund sitting in cash? And can I afford to invest the rest so that's working for me in the future? And investing's a whole other conversation. There is a lot of fear, particularly around losing money when you invest. But it's about understanding the mechanics and the process of investing, because ultimately it is a system, right? And
it is.
a lot of millionaires do invest, buying assets. So
Absolutely. Very interesting. And I think just hearing you now, I feel like it's time to look at it on the other side. Once you've managed to actually overcome those patterns, once you understood different ways that you can implement, like you were saying, to actually make sure that you own your finance, you moved away, like you were saying, from feeling not confident to actually feeling competent and then confident. What does that look like? Healthy financial habits, what does that entail? We've talked a little bit more around, like, for example, awareness. We've talked about practical things like budgeting, but yeah, I'd love to know more if you've got any things to share on that.
yeah, so I think one of the things with when you get your financial habits in the right place, a lot of it is a habit loop, right? And we don't even until someone says to us or points it out to us, what's the reason for that? Sometimes it can feel aligned with us, which is great. But I think one of the key things is being able to automate. So
Ooh, yeah.
automating your finances. So a lot of people tend to, let's say, save whatever is left at the end of the month, rather than
Mm,
being so clear on what they are saving that they actually automate it at the beginning of the month, which then frees up headspace. It frees up that cloud
does.
that we're thinking, I've got to get to the end of the month and still have £100 left in there. It's saying at the beginning that's parked, and then whatever left I can spend guilt free because I'm allowing myself to spend that. So I think the results that the people that I work with get is that they feel, like perhaps this cloud's been lifted, that
Mm,
they feel like they can flow with ease because they're not
yeah.
constantly thinking, well, am I going to have to pay this bill? I've missed this thing out, and knowing that that debt is growing without them knowing because they have the visibility over it. And it's also the confidence, knowing, well, everything's set up in a way that I've designed it. And I'm very passionate about a life by design. So
Mm-hmm.
actually saying, this is what I want to achieve. And then using our finances in a way that benefits us can be really liberating rather than feeling, we have all this shame and guilt around it. So, yeah, it's really about flowing with ease and creating that automation. And of course, life throws us curveballs sometimes, and we think we're gonna, go on this linear trajectory, but ultimately that's not how life works. And another part of what I do is creating this layer which helps people feel secure even in a worst case scenario. So
Nice.
knowing even, if someone got fired from a job, or maybe they wanted a career change, or, wanted to try something new, then they still have the ability, I guess, to shift, because they have that financial security behind them to say, actually, I can now pursue this life of my dreams, whatever career it is.
Absolutely. I love that. And would you recommend, because I know, for example, again, like putting the career coach hat on, I always talk about my clients of revisiting their goals regularly, right? So would you recommend, for example, if, for example, they've got like an automation set in place, like you said, it's a great practical tool to implement. I'm also a big fan of like roundups, like when we were saving for a house, I was like rounding up times 10 or something like that, like just seeing the pot increasing. I feel like it's a nice way to use automation to work in your favor. Sorry, side story. Point is, any recommendation when it comes to financial goals? Would you say you have to have them, for example, for each month, for the year ahead, for 5, 10 years ahead, and then revisit them on a given basis? Like, what would be your recommendation around that?
Yeah, so of course, there's going to be things that maybe we want to achieve on a month-to-month basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a Money Magnet Accelerator program, and in there I explain how people should be setting effective financial goals. There are lots
Nice.
of different schools of thought. The one that I've seen that works the best is by having a 10-year plan. So your
Yeah.
big picture goal. So if you're
Good.
20, thinking about where you want to be when you're 30. If you're 30, when you're 40, and all the way up to retirement. So if you're 50, thinking about into your 60s, what do you actually want to do at retirement? What does that look like? So not just, I don't want to work anymore, but actually, is there a transitionary period? Do you want to
Yeah.
volunteer, play golf, go on a cruise, etc.? And that's the
Yeah.
big picture goal. And then there's anything medium term. So different financial planners might look at this in different ways, but I suggest anything from 12 months to 10 years as a medium
Nice.
plan, just to get an idea of what those goals might be. And those
Yeah.
might be things like buying a house,
Mm.
paying off the car, paying off the debt. And then you have your yearly plan. So that could be, in the short term, feeling more confident with your money. So it could be emotional. It could be more tangible in the next year. So I want to save up X amount, as my emergency fund, or for my property purchase, or to go on holiday. Often people don't plan for things like holidays in their budgets. So they get to the end of the year, they go, oh, I've saved £2,000. They go on holiday, and then they go, well, I never saved anything last year. So it's about incorporating the things that we love to do that align with us as individuals in that short-term plan as well, so that we can spread that cost out throughout the year rather than
Mm-hmm.
having a shock. And when we do
Yes.
an annual review and going, oh, actually, I've overspent on everything. So doing the short-term plan allows us to take advantage of tax-efficient accounts. So when we're
Mm.
talking practically, it could be looking at things like stocks and shares ISAs, cash ISAs, lifetime ISAs, pension pots as well, anything that's going to help us financially to achieve those longer term goals.
That makes sense. Very, very helpful. And just hearing you now, I'm also just taking away the fact that, like you said, you've got to think about a different timeline. And you also have to make sure that, like you were saying, you potentially break it down so that you're anticipating, potential things that have to be moved away. But also, just hearing you about like the annual review, you have to make sure essentially you regularly control and monitor how your spending is going. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, and the word control can feel quite controlling, but it's
Okay. Yeah.
it's also
Good point.
about creating that confidence. So through
Mm.
that control, I think what people get is that confidence, because you're in control of where that money is flowing to, and ultimately creating different pots so that you can achieve the different goals that you've got for yourself.
Yeah. The one question that came to mind just hearing you talking about these different things is, how would you describe a healthy relationship with money? What would that entail?
Oh, this is a good question. So I think it's using it in a way that empowers you to do the things that you want in life and create
Nice.
the rich version of your own life. whether that is just feeling secure with
Mm-hmm.
money, feeling in control and stress free,
Yeah.
or whether it's actually achieving the practical side of things. So saving up X amount or being able to go on holiday, or um, the other thing is also like living the lifestyle that you want to live as well.
Yeah.
So as you said, if we're talking about changing career, people change careers for different reasons. Maybe the job doesn't quite align with them anymore and they want to help people in a different way, or maybe they want to start up a side hustle. So healthy money habits could be allowing yourself to express your creativity as well, and doing those
Nice.
that not just are financially tied, but also enjoy life in whatever way that means for you.
I love that. Very interesting. Very, very good question. I mean, very good answer to this question
Good
in the sense
question.
that very good question. No,
We don't
I'm
think
just
about it.
thinking.
We don't
No,
think
the way,
about what does it look like to have a good money habit. People kind of think, well, we're stuck in this situation and there's a
exactly
cost
that.
of living crisis, and the media and the news narrative we adopt as our own. And we say, well, I'm going to go shopping and maybe spend less money because of what's happening. But actually, is that a true reflection of what's going on inside your bank account and inside your mindset as well?
Exactly that. I feel like this is actually a very important point that you're making because whether it's money, whether it's career, whether it's anything else in your life, essentially, sometimes we just have to stop looking at what's going on the outside world and stop being influenced by external, either whether it's people, whether it's media, government, whatever it is. And like you said, just connect with whatever is going on inside of us and thinking, okay, what actually do I truly want? Like you were saying, like just connecting to those intentions rather than replicating a model for the sake of replicating a model. Like what you said around buying a house. Like some people don't even know why they're buying a house, right? So absolutely, I love that. In the few minutes that we have left, do you have any final either recommendations or final parting thoughts that you want to share with us?
Yes, so so many things have come to my mind. One thing that we didn't even touch on was relationship dynamics when it comes to money. You mentioned
True.
before about the wedding as well.
Yeah.
So how we manage our money sometimes, well, we know that money is one of the biggest causes of divorce in the UK.
Is
And
it? I didn't know that. Okay. Wow.
and part of the reason for that is because people don't talk about it, or we don't have the same money language, right? Someone might have been
Interesting.
brought up
Yes.
in a certain way, and someone else might have been brought up in a different way that maybe doesn't quite align. And unless we know our money stories, when that comes together, it can create friction, right?
Yeah.
And there's also this idea of being able to contribute equally as a partner, as co-pilots in a relationship when it comes to money, rather than having one person handle everything. But maybe that's a conversation for another time. There is a really good book called The Psychology of Money, which
Okay.
if anyone's interested, and there is actually this is quite random, but there is a Netflix documentary called How to Get Rich. So
Mm. I think I saw that passing around. Is this new?
so the guy Ramit Sethi, who runs the program, he has also a lot of resources as well around money, and I take a lot of my influences around budgeting and creating a conscious spending plan from a lot of the work that he's been doing in this space as well, because it is still a relatively new concept. Even
Yeah.
having this conversation now, arguably people would say it's a bit of a taboo topic, and it's quite
Exactly.
brave to even talk about money. So yeah, and the other thing is I obviously have my my Money Magnet Accelerator program as well, which I've designed to really help people tap into whatever their money mindset is, get clear on what those goals are, and then looking at the finer details of their money so that they can use it and automate it in a way which helps them achieve their long-term goals. So
Love that. Perfect. Great recommendations. It was amazing to have you. Where are we with time? Well, there we go. I mean, these things just flew by. I've put the book and the Netflix recommendations as well, along
oh,
with the
nice, you
chat.
found it. That was quick.
Yeah, that was absolutely yeah, very spot on when it comes to those two, and obviously when it comes to what you shared around your school, absolutely we can link the detail as well. Thank you so much, Sarah. It was really good to have you. Thank you, anyone and everyone who has come as well to share this with us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me as well and for having me on. Yeah.
Pleasure. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Bye.